across the world, different ways to lead,
Different voices giving what you need.
different angles, different views, all bringing something you can use.
From every corner, hear the call. Level up now, give it your all.
Mind, body, business, elevate, new perspective, shift your state. This is coaching call.
With Sifu Rafael. Sifu Rafael.
Sifu.
Rafael.
Different paths, different minds. Take what works, leave what doesn't align. Every voice brings something new. Now the choice is up to you. Take the insight, make it real. Turn the vision into skill.
From every corner, hear the call.
Step into it.
Stand up tall. From every corner, hear the call.
Step into it.
Stand up tall. Coaching call with Sifu Rafael. Sifu Rafael.
Diane, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on Coaching Call. We are going to really dive into who you are because I'm curious. I want to get to know you more. We had a discussion earlier, but I think that you are a person that really is helping to shape people's minds and the way they think, the way they do, and all these different fun things. But let's go back like for a minute. Where were you born?
So I was actually born in Westfield, Indiana, but then I was raised in Pennsylvania. So I think I was like 3 days old or something, and my mom flew me to Pennsylvania. So I was raised in Pennsylvania,
3
Elverson.
days old. Wow, look at that. So who would you say, you said your mom took you to Pennsylvania, right, at 3 years old? I mean, 3 days old. Who would you say was your biggest influence, say before the age of 15?
Oh, that's a tough one. So I was actually raised in a religious cult until the age of 14, and we left at that point. So up until then, I had a group. There was 3 of us that hung out as friends because we really didn't have a lot of adult supervision at this religious cult. The adults were very involved in the guy who ran it and stuff. And so a lot of us kids hung out and we were homeschooled. We didn't leave the property. And so there was a group of 3 of us that really influenced each other, really up until I was 14, really helped to create our identity and who we wanted to be up until that point. So it was other kids.
Well, listen, when you're in a situation like that, you kind of align with the people who
Yeah.
believe in what you believe, right? What the support group, if you will, right?
Yeah. We didn't have any other support outside of that. We didn't go to school. We didn't go anywhere to see anyone outside of that. So we were all we had and knew.
I'm going to ask you a question because I ask myself this question a lot. If you had the choice of going back, what would you change so that you would have had the opportunity to be in a normal, non-cultish environment?
My stance for my life has been I wouldn't change anything. And the reason is I have been through, because that was just the part. Then I ended up leaving the cult and didn't know anything about society and got messed up with some really unhealthy people. And I wouldn't change it because that's who made me who I am. That's who made me a therapist and care about people and make changes in the world.
That's powerful. It's very interesting because I say the same thing about my life. Right? All the trials and tribulations and whatever ever happened, there's a purpose, there's a reason. This is who we become, right? So we go through the fire, if you will. And who we come out on the other side, that's what determines everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And without those fires, without those difficulties, we wouldn't sharpen who we want to be. We wouldn't be challenged and really get clear on who is it that I want to be in these difficulties. Do I want to be a victim and blame other people? Do I want to take my power back and choose how I see it? So those difficulties really give us the opportunity to decide who we're going to be.
Diane, did you have fun at this cult? Because I know everybody thinks like cult, you like, "Arr," but did you have fun as a child?
Yes, we had lots of fun, but also there was a lot of scary, a lot of violence, a lot of trauma. But yes, the three of us that hung out, and then all of us kids, there was 27 of us kids. All of us kids had each other's back, covered for each other, took care of each other. So, and we like it was a farm, so we would make tunnels in the bales of hay and crawl through them, and we'd be out sledding in the middle of the night. And so, yes, we had a lot of fun. And so there are lots of fun memories.
You said you got up at 14.
Mhm.
Not your doing, or was it?
No, it was falling apart. All the kids were getting older, and I'm about in the middle. There was kids older than me, and then still a lot of kids younger than me, and it started falling apart because the guy who ran it, his son liked one of the girls that he was having relationships with, and it started all falling apart. So our family was the first to leave when it started falling apart. So it was not my doing.
Gotcha. So you say your family. What did that consist of?
So I have two brothers, one sister, so three other siblings, and my mom. And our whole family left. My dad stayed with him. So I really didn't have a lot of contact with my dad. And so we left. And the weird thing is we didn't really leave. We left where he told us to go. So we moved back into Indiana. But we still had my parents still had a lot of like they went back and forth. They were still very involved. So even though we left physically, we were the first family to leave physically, my parents weren't emotionally removed from it.
Gotcha. So at 14, you go back to Indiana. Are you being homeschooled still, or are you going to regular school? What's going on here?
We got placed in public school, which was a huge culture shock for me being 14, and I have dyslexia, so I couldn't read. So I was placed in 7th grade. They kind of made guesstimates of where we should be. I was placed in 7th grade and I couldn't read. I eventually got readers and writers and note takers and all the accommodations that they now have. But when I first moved out, there really wasn't a lot of services. Like even when I went to college in 92, there wasn't a lot of colleges that had services for people with learning differences. So now that's changed, but at the time,
It had to be not only a physical, because you're doing it, you may get frustrated, but it had to be an emotional challenge as well.
it was a huge adjustment because if anybody remembers back to the Dewey Decimal System, like when you would go to the library, you had to use the Dewey Decimal System to look things up. And I had a teacher who said to me, I said, I don't know how to spell that word. And they said, look it up. And it's like, how do you use a dictionary to spell a word when you have no idea how to spell the word in the first place? You didn't have a phone to do it on. So I would go to this dictionary they had in the corner and stand there and look as if I knew what I was doing when I had no clue. So it was multiple shocks. It was culture shock from going to knowing everybody we lived with to knowing nobody. And I had this idea that everybody else had this amazing life. I had no idea because I hadn't seen other people's lives. I assumed everybody had traveled and done all these things. So I thought I was behind on everything.
What was it like communicating with the kids that had lived normal lives, didn't know what the cult was?
Uh,
What was that
I
like for you?
I didn't tell people I was raised in a cult. I didn't tell people because of all the shame and that, that meant something was wrong with me. And when I finally did, I got into a program called Upward Bound. It was for kids from poverty and because we didn't have anything when we left. And so I got into this program and I actually shared in there and somebody said that I was a freak because of the way I was raised.
Oh, Not a freak, an exceptional human being. I like it.
Thank you. Now I can see that. But at the time, I think I was probably 15, maybe 16 by then. And it was hard.
Yeah, sure. So how did your siblings adjust? And what's the age brackets comparison to where you are?
Yeah. So we're all 2 years apart. So my sister's 2 years older than me. Then there's me. Then I have two brothers 2 years apart, younger than me. Um, so we didn't stay close. Like we still, like I'm going to my brother's son's graduation, but really we didn't stay close. We were so different. And I think there was probably a lot of shame still that we were all dealing with. So everybody kind of went their own way. And my brother's a Jehovah Witness. He's found his peace there. We all struggled to find where we fit in the world, which everybody does. I think for us, it was a little different because we had been isolated from family. Like we didn't know grandmas and cousins. And so we didn't have that as a building block to rebuild on. So we still keep in touch ish, not even holidays, because my brother Jehovah Witnesses don't celebrate holidays. So we don't see him on holidays at all, or, so.
Did you guys ever talk about it?
I think we all struggle in a different way. My sister was very open. I was not at all. So I think I was frustrated at her that she would tell people because I didn't want people to know. My brothers are extremely smart, so I didn't fit in with them because one of my brothers has like a photographic memory, memorizes everything. I obviously with dyslexia don't, so I felt very much like they were different. So we never really stayed connected or found much in common. So I think the other thing I think that plays into this is they are the guy who ran the cult. They are his kids biologically. So it kind of made a separation too, I think.
Gotcha. So did you eventually, when did you start finding your own self, your own identity, if you will?
Yeah. So I had a teacher in high school who was in the special ed department, and she really helped me out. She would help me with testing. She read the tests to me. She really started believing in me before I could believe in me. And then I had a vocational rehabilitation counselor because of my dyslexia and difficulty. I had voc rehab and they helped me. And I had a counselor there who really kind of took me under her wings. And she helped me get into college. She helped me do the testing to figure out what things I should do. So in college, I started really finding myself. Before that, I was really following everybody else, trying to fit in. But in college, I started finding in social work and as a therapist, I started finding my kind of people who I felt like I could be me and not hide me anymore.
Yeah. No good to hide. So Diane, when you had all these people kind of helping you, right? Because they saw the beauty inside of you. They saw the person that you can become. Did you see it or did you not see it until college?
I didn't see it.
Mm.
I think I saw potential or glimpse sometimes, but I didn't see. So for me, and I spent years. So if you guys remember the VHS recording, like I recorded Oprah every day and watched Oprah every day with I had a white white shepherd. And we would lay on my bed together and watch that. And every day I was like, this is where I'm going. All of her insights and development and self-growth. And she was like my model. And I watched every day and I recorded it every day because I was like, that's where I'm going.
So thinking about everything that you went through, the idea, following Oprah, listening to her every day, when did you realize that I need to go into therapy? I need to understand not only me, but help understand other people, maybe even why this cult even was there.
So I think it's a little interesting there because for me, I don't focus on why much. I find why is not really useful. It is. So let's go on with it. Like, what do I want to learn from this? What do I want to take away from this? So, why has never been, they say a lot of us look either back or forward, but very few, like 3% of the time, we're in the moment. I'm a forward thinker. I don't spend a lot of time in the past. Um, Even self-blame for what the choices I made once we left. Like, I don't blame myself at all for 0 to 14. After 14, I got in some really yucky stuff and I didn't know better. And so I had to really come to terms with I was 14 and didn't know better. I didn't know what drug dealers looked like. I didn't know what all this trouble looked like. And so, and I didn't have a sense of self in the world to, so, um, so I would say I'm not someone who focused on why it happened, but what happened for me to really get into therapy was my opinion is because I didn't do books well, because of my dyslexia, I really learned to read people. I really learned to pay attention and notice and observe and give feedback. And so as a kid, I became everybody's therapist and I was always like giving insight and people would praise me for it. And so before I even knew that therapy existed, I was being a little therapist.
But then you decided to pursue it.
Yes. So as a career, I decided to pursue it. And it has been amazing because it is so much about what I think about, where my mind goes. Like I'm really interested in neuroplasticity and our brain's ability to change. And it just excites me to think about how we can change our brain and noticing the thoughts we're having and changing the thoughts. Like that's the stuff I could talk about for hours.
I love it. And so can I, because it's so fascinating that we have this incredible computer in there, right?
Yeah.
And I'll share a quick story with you. I had a little girl yesterday, 5 years old, and I say do so because I was teaching kung fu, and I would say do this, and then she'll do it, and then I'll go do that, and then she just stops, and she comes over and she whispers, "Sifu." So I would show her, and then she'd be okay, and then come back. She would do the same thing. She would whisper to me, and so I said, "Stop." I said, "Why are you whispering? Are you whispering because you don't think you know it?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." I said, "I'm going to teach you a trick." "Really?" I said, "Yeah." So here's the trick. I want you to think of a librarian. You know who a librarian is? Yes, I do. Okay. So imagine that she's going to go and into your mind, and she's going to look for that little card. What color would the card be? Would it be orange? Would it be? She goes, "It's white." I said, "Okay." That little white card is going to have the instructions to every move you ever learned that I already taught you. You just forgot, and you forgot where it is. So I want you to go get that little card. I said, "I cannot teach you the next move." I said, "You got to go look for it." So she thought, and I go, "What's the first move?" And she goes, "I got to do this." I go, "Very good." And so we went through the whole process where she actually was able to do the whole thing without me teaching it to her again. And then I go, "So now," she goes, "Now I'm going to remember it." I said, "And if you ever forget, what do you do?" He goes, "I'm going to call the librarian." I said, "Perfect." I said, "Perfect." And so when we think about the mind, it is the most incredible thing that once we see something, everybody says you can't unsee it, but the same thing happens when we hear it because it gets stored. It's the most beautiful thing that we can think of. And so when I have a lot of people say to me, "I can't remember that. I have a bad memory." I said, "Oh, course you do, because you keep telling yourself that.
Yeah.
So if you stop saying that and start saying, like kids, I'll tell them all the time, I say, do me a favor, start saying, I have the best memory. I have the best memory.
Yeah.
And they'll say it. They'll say it. And they're like, I forgot. I say, wait, I got a trick for you. So this is why I love what you do. I love the fact that you talked about, stasis, the fact that the mind can reshape itself or
Yeah.
reconfigure itself and become more.
Yeah. That's a great story because we have it in us, but we don't look in. We look outside. We look for someone answer, some insight, something outside of us. I call that outsourcing. We look for something out here instead of going inside and being like, what do I know to be true? What is working for me? We think somebody else has got that answer.
I was listening to something this morning and made me think of the Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is so brilliant because even if he didn't sing about it, but just looking in the mirror, you can't make the mirror happy. You have to make yourself happy, and the mirror becomes happy, right? The reflection.
Yeah.
And so everything stems from within us, but it's the outside that sees what we feel. Right?
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of times somebody will say, tell your face how you feel. Because you're telling me you're happy, but you look miserable right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I guess we always ask somebody, how you feeling?
Yeah.
What's going on?
And you notice when you ask people how they're feeling, they want to tell you what they're doing. Well, this is what I did today. It's like, no, how are you feeling? That's an emotion.
So college, how was that for you?
College was a journey because partly because of my dyslexia and partly because I was in the process of finding my people. And so it was like, as I found more social workers and therapists and self-development people, I was like, these are my people, but how do I fit into it? So it was for I think for everybody, college is a journey of how do I fit into the world? Who do I like now we know the people we spend the most time with, the five people we spend the most time with is how we become, who we become. And so then I didn't know that, but that was the process I was going through is who do I want to be like? Who do I spend time with? I actually got a job in working what was called adaptive educational services. So it had we did all the accommodations for people with physical and emotional and all the disabilities, including my dyslexia. And so I worked in that department. So I was surrounded with those people. And so what actually I started to see was I'm getting too soft. I'm getting too compassionate. I'm getting too involved in that. And so what I started realizing is I needed a business. So I actually have my master's in business as well because I was like, it's kind of like that song says, live in California once, but not till you get too soft. Live in New York once, but not till you get too hard. I was in social work and I was starting to get too soft and too compassionate and too unrealistic about life. And I needed the business side that says we still need to have businesses. We can't give everybody free services. We can't, there is a business side to it. So in college, I really surrounded myself with much more compassion and kind and gentle and started seeing that I wasn't balanced and I needed to go back and get educated and more business world.
I love that. I'm going to ask you a question that may help a lot of people. I don't have dyslexia, and there's a lot of people who don't, but there's also a lot of people who do. How would you describe dyslexia for someone who's never experienced it?
Ooh, you look at a page of letters and they make no sense. They're like Greek or Latin or I used to look at a book of letters and I would be like, how are these words? I don't understand how any of this can be words. So gosh, it just up until when I was 14, I started. So when we left the religious cult, it was April 28th, 1986. and school was not out. So we weren't allowed to be outside because we were supposed to be in school. And that would have been a Child Protective Services report if they knew we weren't in school. So during the school day, we had to stay inside. So I sat in my room and read romance novels, and I started learning to read. I would skip words I didn't know, but for the most part, I could make it make sense. There would be pages that I couldn't. And so I started learning like sight words is what they call them, basic words that you start. And then I would read to my mom, and she could figure out what I was saying. Like when I would try to sound them out, she could figure them out. But really, looking at words just didn't make sense to me for a long time. Like I didn't understand. They just looked like a bunch of gibberish. So it took me a long time. I didn't learn to read till probably 15. Now I read, obviously, but I do. I would say I'm slower than other people still. And then spelling, which is more acceptable now to not spell well, but spelling was absolutely atrocious because the reading was hard. So with dyslexia, a lot of people say they just switch stuff around. For me, it was much more than that. It wasn't like 42 looked like 24, or you couldn't tell which L. Like I couldn't, and I still have to really write it out. But it was pretty severe. I could not wrap my head around words and reading, or even clocks. Like clocks didn't make a lot of sense for a long time. Now we have digital. It's beautiful, but
So the reading was difficult. Did you have difficulty writing as well?
yeah, because I couldn't read. So one of the things I vividly remember was when they put me in 7th grade, and they would write on a chalkboard, and they would write out the notes you're supposed to take. And I couldn't read the words to write them down. So I would do 3 letters at a time. So I'd be like THE and write down THE and then go back up to the board. And so they would erase it and be moving on. And I would still be on the first or second line of writing notes. So I did get note takers. They started having note takers where they would copy someone. We would Xerox someone else's notes. And then the teachers would start just giving copies of their notes to me as well. But then I got note takers, and then I could read those notes. And then we had programs at the time that were starting to come out where they could read to you, but they weren't very good yet. But yes, writing was very difficult for me.
Thank you so much for explaining that, because a lot of people don't understand when somebody says, I have dyslexia. They're like, yeah, they just brush it off, right? And when it's such a difficult for anybody who has it, not just yourself, but there's been a lot of people who've actually written books, who've done a lot of things, who have gone to become professors and so forth, and all of these different things that were a challenge, but they overcame them in order to achieve the greatness that's in them, right? Because the dyslexia did not stop you from being the exceptional human being you are today.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where grit comes from. And when I started hearing her teaching on grit, I was like, this is it, because I think my dyslexia gave me my grit. I think growing up in the cult gave me my grit. Like having to go through those things is where I got my grit, because I had to persevere through all those difficulties. And now I see it with my daughter. I have a daughter with Down syndrome. She's now 19. She's still in school, but she will keep going, and she's got grit because it's harder for her than most people.
I can only imagine. When you finished college, you knew, and obviously you said, I need business too, right? When did you finish college and then get into practice and then say, wait a minute, I got to go back? Or was it during that same time?
I realized I needed business. I was doing my master's in social work, and I realized I needed more business philosophy, thinking, just the whole concept of social work is great and therapy is great, but it taught so much compassion and softness that it really was losing. There's a reality of a world out there, and there's a reality of our economy is about making money, and you can't give away all your free services and sustain yourself. So when I graduated in 99, I was making $13 an hour. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't work. I was working at a hospital. I was working at two actually, in Indianapolis. I can't make $13 an hour and sustain myself. So I went straight back into my master's in business. So I think maybe 6 months or something between graduating with one and starting the other.
Talk to us about what it has been like since college. Where have you planted your seeds, if you will?
Okay. So when I graduated, I did a lot of community mental health center work. So I worked for 19 years in a mental health emergency room where we assess people who are suicidal, homicidal, overdose, brought in by the police because they made a suicide threat. And so they were handcuffed and brought in for everybody's safety. I did that for 19 years and at the same time doing other jobs along with it. Loved it. Really grew into understanding like the trauma people go through, the effects of all this, like being brought in against your will. Really learned so much. Worked in the downtown Indianapolis hospital where I got exposed to so many amazing opportunities to see like all the homeless people and what their lives look like and assessing them and stuff. So tell me your question again. What was it like once I graduated?
Yeah, where'd you plant your seeds? Because and something that you just said sparked another question. So, um, where did you plant your seeds? Because when we plant our seeds, we also have to keep watering them, fertilizing them, the whole deal, right?
Yeah. So I did for a long time, I did community mental health center up until, and I went part time and then started my private practice. And so I did, and I loved what I did, but I started finding that I didn't ethically agree a lot of times. We would force people in the hospital that I didn't think needed it because of lawsuits, because of risk that people didn't want to take. And it started feeling like it wasn't aligned with my values anymore. It wasn't what I wanted to be part of anymore, and so I kind of outgrew it. So in 2019, I left permanently. I had already halfway I was doing my private practice, and in 2016, I went to private practice and at the hospital, but it started feeling like we were doing things to prevent lawsuits or risk versus what was really best for people, and it didn't fit with who I wanted to be.
That makes a lot of sense. You said something, and you said I worked for 19 years, and I loved it because people were in a bad state, if you will.
Yeah.
But you said you loved it. What was it about that you loved?
There was something about holding space and being with people who are in probably the worst place they've ever been,
Mm.
and being able to be there and be like, "I got you," and you don't have to take it all on alone. There is something about, and I think a lot of it probably goes back to growing up. If I were to look at my past, like, when people are suffering, the biggest gift we can give is not have them suffer alone.
Does that mean we have to suffer with them? No, right?
No.
Good.
So one of the things that you learn as a therapist is not to get secondary trauma from other people's trauma. Now, there are cases that I did, but no, you don't suffer with them, but you hold space for that. One of the things that I found so profound is when people were brought into the emotional ER, we called it the crisis unit, and they were handcuffed and they were in pajamas and they couldn't get their glasses or their wallets, like they were brought against their will. They were so angry and they felt so violated. And when you can sit there and say, I get it, I would feel that way too. They would be ready to fight the minute I walked in the room. And when I sat down and I could say that to them, they just felt deflated. They were like, felt validated. And being able to be that person who could change that energy and be like, I get this sucks. I would be pissed at everyone too right now.
Mm.
And And it changed me going through that with them.
That's huge. That's huge. Thank you for sharing that, because you're right. People, especially when they get displaced, right? Imagine coming in your pajamas and handcuffs, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you were sleeping or whatnot, and things just got out of hand. Um, you decided to go into your own practice because of what you saw that I was doing. And it's horrible because somebody just said to me, we were at the hospital and they kept my wife there until 3 p.m. But meanwhile, she could have left at 11 a.m. And they kept us there because the minute 3 p.m. hit, it was a shift and we got charged for an extra day.
Mm.
And I'm like, that's horrible. And he goes, yeah. And we were so mad about it. But there was nothing they can do. And so it's a money thing, but it's also, like you said, they want to protect themselves at all costs, right?
Yeah.
So it's good for you for going on your own.
Thank you. Yeah. It took a lot of courage. So many of us are raised to think you go to college, you get a good job, and you work at jobs for the rest of your life. And getting out of that mentality. And for me, because I saw my mom when we left the cult, it was called Temple of Spiritual Learning. When we left Temple, she had no degree. She had to go to school and put herself through college. She got her master's in business and became an accountant. She had to do that while the four of us were at home, and she was still raising us. She wasn't there much because she had to work full time too. Um, so I watched her. She worked in a chicken factory and she gutted chickens on a conveyor belt. So her hands would be all torn up and arthritis stuff from doing that. And I was like, I don't want to ever be in that kind of position.
It's very interesting when we can see someone and we kind of learn from their mistakes,
Yeah.
right? That's why I believe in coaching so much, because I rather have a coach who already did the mistakes so I don't have to do them. Okay. So they're going to help me. They're going to guide me, because if it's going to take me 6 years to get to where you are and you're going to teach me in 3 to 6 months,
Yeah.
here's my money. Take my money. All right.
Yep. Yeah.
Let me,
And
let me
it's
share
kind of
something with you. Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm listening to you first.
It's the same thing with therapy. If you can go to therapist and you can learn the skills or the mindset management, or a coach or a therapist, either one, that's going to excel you years, why would you not? Why would you not get that skill, that insight, that even if you're not even sure if it'll work, try it and see. Like, open your eyes and your brain to this idea that there's other ways, other things that could accelerate your life in so many ways so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, this is why I believe in it so much. And thank you so much for being on Coaching Call, because a lot of people don't realize the power of a great coach. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of terrible coaches out there. You and I probably both have had them, right? And people listening, and they're like, I never want to coach, they're terrible. And you had a bad experience. We get that. But I've had so many, and I've fired coaches, right? But I've had such great coaches as well who have helped me elevate, which is truly important. So anybody out there, you don't need to do it alone. And if you can fast forward, do it. Do it with a good coach. Do it with a great coach. Right?
Yeah. And I would say, even if you swap coaching with somebody, if you are a coach or swapping services, one of my best friend, she and I used to run a couple times a week together, and she's a therapist as well. So we use therapy on each other. We helped each other excel and grow, and challenged each other and called each other out. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a paid. Like, find a mentor if you can't afford to pay right now, and find people who are willing to give back and utilize that. I use the analogy a lot of times, like I have my hand in a fist here, and I'm like, our brains are closed to the idea. We're like, we'll figure it out, we'll do it ourselves, pull myself up by my bootstraps kind of thinking. And what I want to do is start opening people's brains and their mind to this idea that there is people out there is services out there are people that can help you think differently and accelerate your life so quickly.
Mm. I like the open hand because it tells you there's so many different branches that you can
Yeah.
expand on, right? So I
Yeah.
like that. Let me share a video with you. Take a look.
You followed the rules, tried the restrictions, counted the carbs, the steps, and the failures. You're not lazy, you're exhausted from doing it all without real change. What if the problem isn't you, but the plan? Sifu's Mind Body Method is a 90-day transformation built on 7 unshakable pillars: mindset, movement, nutrition, hydration, fasting, journaling, and faith. This isn't another shortcut. It's your structure, your strength, your reset. You don't need harder, you need better. Ready to begin? Start today.
So let me ask you something as well, because you talked about it earlier, and me watching my own commercial made me think about what you have to do practically every day when you're seeing different patients, different people with different situations, and it's hard to not get involved. Do you have to reset yourself at
Yeah.
the end of the day and say, I'm not taking this home, I'm not taking this home. This has to stay in the office, because you take it home and it's going to start to consume you, doesn't it?
Yes, but what I would say is also, I'm not a fan of saying we keep work at work and home at home. We're
No,
one
I get
person.
yeah.
So what I actually try to do, and I suggest people do, is actually like grieve when we need to, acknowledge it was sad, it was hard. We have people who are dealing with really hard things, and being able to acknowledge it and feel it. And then it's kind of like piss and moan and then put it into perspective. So be sad, feel it, and then let it go. Don't carry it. I My opinion is we don't grieve enough in the US. We just keep moving on. And so we see somebody, like I had a case years ago. My daughter was 12 at the time, and I had a case where a woman had rolled a four-wheeler and crushed a child that was in the four-wheeler. And she came into the crisis unit totally traumatized, crying hysterically, going over and reliving it in her brain. I took that on. My daughter was just like a year different age. I couldn't imagine. We had four-wheelers, we still do, and I just totally could picture that happening. And I told my kids, "You're gonna see mommy crying some." I had a really hard case. Like, to me, trying to say, "I just need to shut it off and not feel it," wasn't going to work. I needed to be like, "This is sad. This is hard. A child died. This woman feels like she's a baby killer." Like, she just kept saying, "I'm a baby killer." And I had to, like, listen to that and be there for her, and I can't just shut it down. So we've got to feel the sadness, grieve for what happened, and then know our life still goes on. Like, we get secondary trauma sometimes, but what I wanna suggest here is that I'm not a fan of just being like, "We need to move on," but we need to feel it and then move on.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. I'm with you in that fact, because it's very interesting. I will have a client that's no longer with me, and they'll pop into my head, and I'm concerned. I'm like, "Well, I hope they're doing well," you know. And so it's very interesting, because when we care about people,
Yeah.
they're going to stay with us, and it could be a long time. Even once they're gone, we can think
Yeah.
about them. Right? And it's very interesting. I had a client I was with yesterday who knew a different client who's no longer, the guy moved out of state, right? And then he started telling me, George did this and George did that. And I'm like, interesting. I said, so you remember George? He goes, oh, yeah. I said, yeah, George was incredible, really great guy. And so we were talking about George, but even though he's not in our lives anymore, he still made an impact, right? So
Yeah.
whether it's positive or negative, people are going to make an impact in your life. And there's no shutting down. And I know that, right? You can't shut it off. But like you said, is you can accept it, deal with it, and then move on so that you can, because if you hold on to it, then how are you going to help the next person?
Yeah.
Right? Accepting it gives you the tools that you can use to now help the next person.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you say accepting, to me, that means a lot of like leaning into it. I had a friend die of cancer, and she was younger than me. And I'm listening to a client telling me about her mom dying. And I start tearing up. And I was like, okay, I need to process this, but this is not the time. Like, I'm here to support her. But we have emotions, and acknowledging, oh, this is a sign that I actually need to do some more grieving, not in session. So being able to say, oh, this is a cue. My emotions are telling me something. And knowing that we need to do our own work and lean into it instead of resisting it.
Yeah, that's important to lean into it, right? When you consider the fact that you accepted to be on my show, what does that do for you personally compared to other therapists who said, I'm never going to go on shows. I don't need to talk to anybody. It's my practice. It's my thing. Why did you decide to be not just on my show? I'm sure you're going to be on other shows as well.
Mhm.
But what is that doing, and how is that helping any?
So we know that, I think the research says 35, we stop wanting to do new things. We get stuck in our comfort zone, and we like our comfort. And so I really try hard to stay out of my comfort zone and challenge myself and keep doing new things to feel alive and energized, because it is human nature to get kind of like I am planning to go rollerblading again. I haven't rollerbladed for a little while, but I'm like, I want to keep doing things that get me to challenge myself and my thinking and my way of doing things and keep feeling alive.
Yeah, it's beautiful to feel alive. If you don't understand who you are, it's hard to get into so many different areas that where you can shine your light the brightest, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us about I know we have like 14 minutes, 13 minutes left. Talk to us about the brain hack of how you help people um, understand trauma, all these different things that you help people.
Okay. So, one of the things that happened for me as I was getting into more and more relationships as I got older and got into college and was trying to figure out how I fit with relationships. And one of the things I started seeing as I got older was something that I call the access loss and brain hijack. And so, what would happen is, as a therapist, I taught people the skills. I taught people communication skills. I taught people how to be in relationship. And what I found is I wasn't using the skills. I would find that there would be a split second where I would lose access to staying calm, to staying grounded, to speaking the way I wanted to. And I would promise myself it won't happen again. I'll stay calm next time. I won't say those mean things. And I would do it again. And I saw this with clients, and I was like, there is something happening. So I started, and this is where I call it the brain hijack. Our brain gets hijacked and we go into survival mode. So we lose access to our prefrontal cortex, our wise brain, and we go into reptile survival brain. And we say things we would normally never say. And we behave in ways we would normally never do. And so I started watching this in myself, because I would be like, I would be calm. And then all of a sudden, I would start saying things that I would never want to say to anybody,
Mm.
to my partner or to my child. So I'll be honest here. So what I started really looking at was what happens. We start to lose access to the ability to be connected. So I've created like a framework where it's like safety, and then
Mm.
access, and regulation. And so this framework helps people walk through, where am I losing access and what tends to be the place that my brain gets hijacked, because there tends to be different styles like disconnection, escalation, control, adaptation. And so those are the 4 styles that I've recognized and said, these are the styles we tend to do when we get hijacked. We go into that. Some people it's controlling, some people escalate, and it feels safer to get aggressive or loud instead of staying present and grounded in your body. So a lot of what I do is help people start recognizing, when do I get triggered and lose access to myself and get into a brain hijack? And how do I start recognizing and grounding myself so that if I do get hijacked, I can unhijack quickly, and then I get hijacked less and less. Because most of us have experienced the time where we've lost access to, we were going to say the right thing, we were going to stay calm, and we lose access to it.
Yeah. That's why a lot of people will say, well, I didn't mean to say that. You said it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now deal with it.
Yeah. And then we think that if we say we're sorry, that should make it right. But we said it and it was hurtful.
One of the things that I teach is that I teach people, when somebody says sorry, never say that's okay. Because it's like saying, you know what, I forgive you, that's okay. But when you say that, what happens is you tell them it's okay, do it again. And so what I teach clients is, if somebody does something wrong and they apologize, say, I accept your apology, but we have to remind them, don't do it again.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like it. Nobody else is going to like it. So we got to remind people that, hey, you know what? I may forgive you this time, but if you do it again, I may not forgive you next time. But when we just say, it's okay, I forgive you, the words they heard was, it's okay, do it again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. One of the things I teach is saying, thank you. Thank you for the apology. I appreciate that. And just kind of letting it go at that. But I like the idea of making it clear, like my boundary is, I'm letting this, like, I appreciate this, but that doesn't mean I'm okay with it again. I teach with apologies because I think people apologize generically. Like, we know, most of us know now, like, you apologizing, like, I'm sorry you feel hurt, is not a real apology, because that's just saying you're not owning what you did. You're saying, I'm sorry you feel an emotion, but you're not owning what you did. But I think it's even more important when we apologize to say exactly what we're sorry for. I am sorry I said these words. But a lot of times we're just like, I'm sorry we fought. That's not really an apology. Like, that's like, an apology is, I'm sorry for, I'm owning my part in it. And I'm going to make a correction to make sure this doesn't happen again as best I can.
That's where it separates it, right? It makes it real. Because a lot of people will say, I had somebody who kept saying sorry to me so often that I said to them, the next time you say sorry to me, you're going to have to do push-ups.
Ah.
And they're like, what? I said, yeah, anytime I'm going to make you do push-ups. So stop saying sorry. I said, you need to use better words.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden your sorry doesn't mean anything.
And what do? This is what I teach, is when we say we're sorry all the time, we start shrinking. Like, we're apologizing for taking up space, and we're apologizing for just being human. So instead, it's excuse me if somebody's in the way or you feel like you're in the way. It's excuse me. And I'm sorry is only when you truly are sorry for something. You don't say it because it does lose power. It loses meaning when you say I'm sorry. But it also teaches us that we start shrinking and becoming smaller.
It's interesting because somebody said to me, you never say sorry to me. And I'm like, should I?
And I do. When I don't show up as the person, what I teach myself and my clients is, when you don't show up as the person you want to be, that's when you apologize. So I own, I was not the friend I wanted to be when I did or said this. That I'm sorry for. As a parent, I've had to do a lot of apologizing. I am sorry that I said that to you. Like, so I apologize and what the reason I recommend doing it is because I'm training me who I want to be. It's not really about the other person. It's that that's not the person I wanted to show up as.
Diane, I say this a lot. And tell me if it's the right thing for me to say, because I know you would know better. I will tell people I may say things, I may do things that I don't realize. And if I hurt you in the process, do me a favor, don't hold it. Tell me so I
Yeah.
can become better. When I know better, I can become better. But if I don't know any better, I will keep thinking I'm doing it right, that I'm treating you the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Because I think this is how you need to be treated, but that's not how you want to be treated. So help me so I can be a better friend, partner, whatever it is, right? So this is something I always tell people so that I know that our relationship is going to be there. But if they come back and say, 3 weeks ago, I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't tell me 3 weeks ago? Why'd you hold on to it, right? So that's why I speak the way I speak.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. For me, I think I would help my clients short it to like one sentence, because I think we get too wordy when you lose our point in our words. But having like one sentence that says, if I say something that hurts you or you don't feel good about, please let me know.
Yeah.
But I think that's important because what often happens I see in couples is one person, often is the woman, is feeling hurt because the other person didn't treat them right, but they don't tell them. Like, a lot of women are upset because they didn't make a big enough deal of Mother's Day or my birthday or whatever that was, and then they're upset, but they don't say, "Hey, this is what I want. Please make sure you get me this. Please make sure you do this." So if we don't tell people what our expectations are or what we would like, they can't do it.
Yeah. This is why with my fiance, I don't openly just go and buy her any gift. I ask. Because one time I thought, oh my gosh, years ago, there was this really fancy watch and it came with 3 different bands that she can change. And it was just gorgeous to me. And I thought she's going to love it. And she got it and she's like, oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I think she wore it once.
Mm.
So then I said, wow, I messed up, didn't I? And I said, what happened to the watch? She goes, oh, I really don't want to wear it. Really? I've seen you wear watches. Okay. So then I said, I made a mistake, right? So what I said afterwards is I said, hey, you know what? Instead of me getting you something that you're not going to like as much or you're not going to, why don't we go and pick it out together? I'll pay for it, but I want what's best for you. Because obviously I don't always know. And don't get me wrong, every so often I'm out somewhere and I'll see something that she's already bought herself. I'll buy it for her.
Yeah.
So I'm safer that way. But for me, it's about the other person because what I want is not always what they want. So if I ask, I think that it'll be a happier situation. I do the same thing with my kids because as a kid growing up, if I used to get a lot of hand-me-downs, so I had no choice. But when my kids were getting older and I thought they wanted something, they're like, "No, I don't want that." I'm like, "Okay, you know what? I'm no longer buying you things. We're gonna go shopping together. And you
Yeah.
buy whatever it is that you want within this price range," right? It wasn't like, go use my whole credit card, but let's have some fun doing it. And they enjoyed that more because they're like, "Can I get that?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course you can get it." And it helped them say, "You know what? That sees me." So
Yeah.
I thought that was good for me and my relationship with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea doing it together.
Mhm.
The other option would be because some people say, well, that kills the gift. Like if they already know what I'm getting them, it kills the gift. And so I'm like, well, then ask them to pick out 3 things that they would like, and you can get one of those 3 things. But I 100% agree. You don't want to spend a lot of money getting a gift they don't want. And then you're hurt because you're like, I got them this watch and they don't wear this watch. And what's wrong with the watch?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah. So, yeah.
And it's very interesting. She still has it, but I'm like, you know what? At this point, she should like sell it or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was not.
So it's a lesson we can all learn from is how do we give gifts in a way that they would appreciate it and we feel like we gave them value instead of things that should sit on a shelf and you feel rejected a little because they didn't want it as much as you thought they would.
Oh, I learned quick. That was many years ago.
Yes. Yeah. But it's so many different things. Like in my teachings, I teach about I had a yoga room my husband built me, which is one of those things where I had wanted, but he built it not where I wanted, not the way I wanted, a garden, the same thing. So it's lots of things. It's not just buying gifts. It's like communicating what we want because the other person thinks they're depositing into our love bank and they're not. And we don't tell them that. And then they're disappointed and frustrated that we don't use the thing that they thought was a deposit into our love bank.
That's it. I love this. Thank you for this incredible conversation. I know we jumped all over the place, but it helped me understand who you are as a human being, and you're incredible. And keep doing what you're doing because a lot of people need what you're doing. Right? You're helping so many people understand who they are because sometimes people are lost,
Yeah.
and sometimes they need that guidance. And thank you for helping out and guiding
Thank
so
you.
many people. Yeah. Your website is going across the bottom and has been. Tell us what somebody can expect when they get there, and then we'll wrap up the show.
Okay. So on my website, you will find the access loss quiz. So there's a quiz there. It's an assessment, 5 questions, takes less than 2 minutes. It'll give you what your access loss style is and then what to start doing about it. There's also a 20-minute webinar on there that you can watch that talks more about the brain hijack, how to manage the brain hijack, things to do like emotional safety that you can create that holds to create safety for yourself and then returning to yourself so you no longer lose yourself in the process.
Nice. Awesome. But make sure you check it out. And do me a favor, someone that you know may need to hear the messages that were delivered in today's call. So, coaching call. Do me a favor, share it. All right. God bless. Diane, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, everybody.